Welcome back. I am Wendy J. Haney, and today I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful table topper. Yep, last time I did a video, I did it on the split 9-patch block, which is right here. And at the end, I insinuated that, I'm thinking it would make a very nice table topper. So here we are. What I've done is basically I've merged in my video from the last time to show you how to make the split 9-patch in case you didn't catch that video. And then we'll merge into showing you how to turn those blocks into a table topper. And you know what? This will work with any blocks you make too. It doesn't need to be the split 9-patch, but this worked out really well this way. So if you've already watched the video and already know how to make the split 9-patch, see the description below, and in it there are tags to allow you to jump forward in the video to where I start talking about making the table topper, since you've already know how to make the split 9-patch. If not, watch the whole video. We're going to jump in now to the video on showing you how to make the split 9-patch. Split 9-patch. I just think this block is so pretty, and I've been having fun with 9-patches lately, so figured we'd go with this. What I discovered though is if you Google split 9-patch, you're gonna find a whole variety of different ones. I got mine from the Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Blocks. So that is the version that I'm working with when I'm talking about the split 9-patch. If you want to try other variations, go out and check them out too. A lot of them are very similar. Today, though, we're going to talk about this one, and this one is really pretty easy to make. We are dealing with a 9-patch. Yep, 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3. 3 times 3 is 9. So we have 9 squares in here, and I want to work with a 9-inch quilt block because you know what? A 9-patch, 9-inch, it just works, in my opinion. So that means if you have 3 squares across, and it needs to be 9 inches across finished. Each of these need to be finished as 3-inch blocks. We're working with a 1/2 inch seam on each side, which means they need to be 3.5 inches before we sew them in here. So when I'm working with these little blocks that are going to go in here, these need to be 3.5 inches. And it's critical for you to know your numbers because we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We need 6 half-square triangles that are identical. So in that scenario, in my opinion, we're going to do it a super easy way. And you're going to end up with 8. Yes, if you're making a single block, you're going to have 2 extra half-square triangles. But more than likely, you're not making a single block and you're going to make a number of them. So getting 8 at a time, eventually, it'll even out. So let me show you how easy it is to make this split 9-patch, making half-square triangles super easy. To make 8 half-square triangles super easy, you can start with just 2 squares. So in this case, my finished block is using 2 colors. So this is going to be super easy. So I need 2 colors, and I'll end up with 8 half-square triangles that I need. In order to figure out what size square you need to start with to create your 8 half-square triangles, you take the finished size of your block, which is 3 inches, multiply it by 2, which is 6, and then you add 1 3/4 inches. And that's what you'll find in a lot of places. Personally, I would suggest you add 2 inches. That gives you a little more wiggle room, especially as a beginner. Give yourself a little more wiggle room because what we're going to do is once we get these half-square triangles cut out, you're going to trim them to make sure they're perfectly 3.5 inches. And if you start with an 8-inch block, you end up with a little more room to be super, super accurate. Okay, so we have our 2 blocks, and before I put them together, what you're going to want to do is draw a mark corner to corner. Okay, there's that one. And I'm using a 6 by 12 inch OmniGrid ruler. It's just kind of like the perfect size, not too big, not too small. Okay, there we go. Hopefully you can see that. There we go. I have the X marks the spot. Now we're going to put our right sides together of our two 8-inch squares, and they don't need to be super exact, but if you go with a 7 3/4 inch block, you want it to be more exact because you don't have a ton of wiggle room. And then I'm going to pin them to hold them in place. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go to the sewing machine and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each sides of these lines. So do not stitch on the line. Stitch a 1/4 inch on both sides. So basically, 1/4 inch on both sides, and then 1/4 inch on both sides. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my baby lock machine that I just line up right with that line, and it gives me a nice 1/4 inch seam right on the other side. Okay, so once that is done, you end up with this. Yep, it's all sewed. Hopefully you can see that okay. Can we get a spacer? There we go. Those are my lines. So you've got your lines that you drew, and then a 1/4 inch on each side. And I personally like to use this wonderful 12-inch Olfa rotating mat, because here's what we're going to do. Now that you've got your seams, your lines sewn on both sides of those lines, what you're going to do is you're going to take your ruler and you're going to cut right down the middles. So you're going to cut here in the middle, and then we got a reflection from the light. There we go. You're going to right down here in the middle, and then we're going to do it again this way. So key thing is you're going to have this nice little square in the middle where your lines are all lined up. That's where you're going to want to cut right through to make this nice and accurate. Okay, lift your ruler up very carefully. For me, I spin my mat. I'm going to get that other. And usually I try and line up straight at the top too, but in general, the most important aspect is getting there in the center. Okay, I've got my other cut. Now, the last things you want to do, once again, don't move it, but if it's easier for you now to pick up each of these cut pieces and do the last cut, that's completely fine, because at this point you are going to cut on the lines that you drew. So you're going to cut corner to corner. And this is why you sewed a 1/4 inch on both sides of the lines you drew. Voila! We have it all. And what do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8. We have 8 pieces, and they are each a wonderful half-square triangle. Yep. So now we have our 8 half-square triangles. Now, we only need to use 6 of them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to finger press these, and I am pressing to the, for me, it's kind of like it's a half a dozen of one, 6 of the other, in the fact that I consider my red, I might refer to that as my background fabric, and then my print. And so in that, I am pressing all of my squares to the red side. So they're all being pressed to the red side. And that way, when we start to sew this block together, things piece very nicely. I'm gonna finger press those, and then I take them to the sewing machine and press them. It is very, very important for you to press your pieces and have them all nice so the seams aren't, they're all nice and pressed out before we trim them. I now have all of my half square triangles all pressed nice and neat, and now we're going to trim them. I am using a 6-inch square OmniGrid ruler. What I love about this one is it has corners and then great lines, but also my diagonal line in the middle. My diagonal line is super important when trimming up these blocks, because the key thing is you can't just put your ruler on here and trim up a 3.5 inch. You have to make sure your corners line up on your diagonal. So as I said, if you're using a 7 3/4 inch square, you do not have much wiggle room. And I happen to be doing that right now, which is why I decided to tell you, you might want to go with an 8 inch square and you'll be much happier. So I don't have a lot of wiggle room, pretty much just what I need. Key thing is, get your corner down here, line up on your angle, and your corner down here. So here's my 3.5 inch corner, and there's the tip. And so there is not much trimming that is going to be done other than that pesky tail. Then you flip it around, and now this is your good side. You're trimmed off, and it's nice and even and square. So you line that right up against your 3.5 inch line. Your diagonal should still match. And perfect. Just got a little bit. So even though you think these might be perfectly 3.5, go through them all and get them all trimmed up so they are perfect. Okay, now get rid of that. I actually have a whole bunch of squares ready to go. Oh, you're also going to want a few more 3.5 inch blocks. You need 2 of your red, which I'm referring to as my background fabric, and 1 for your center, which matches the opposite of your hourglass. Now, with that said, you can do whatever you want with this. Scrappy, 3 colors, whatever. If you do that, just be aware that you're going to need to make more sets of half square triangles, because doing it this way, we're making our half square triangles with 2 colors of fabric, and that is it. But there are plenty of other methods out there to create half square triangles one at a time with different types of fabric. So just keep that in mind. But we're making it super, super easy. And so we're gonna lay it out, put our solid in the middle. So basically our squares are at an angle. And then that triangle points the middle. So we've got our triangles pointing our middle this way, and then we intersperse our other ones the opposite. Basically what I've done always is do 1 block first. Lay it out, make sure you have it right, before you go making 10 blocks one right after the other and having everything done and discovering, oh crud, I have that backwards. You won't be very happy. And the reason I know this is because I've done this. This is why I always do 1 block first, and then I've got my finished block, and I usually have it sitting in front of me and going, okay, lay it out, and we're good to go. Okay, so there we go. Now, what we do is we're going to just stitch them together in rows. First thing we do is put this over to there, this over to there, and that over there. And then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew 1/4 inch on each of these. Now, I always like to sew with my pieced block up. So there's no seams on this one, so I like to have that on the bottom. That way, I can make sure that this little seam there doesn't get caught wonky under my presser foot. So I just like to have it facing up when I sew it. And it won't matter. Doesn't matter which direction you sew it. So I'm gonna make these all nice, and then I'm gonna go to the sewing machine, and I'm just chain piece them. I'm gonna put this one under my presser foot and sew, and then this one right under it and sew, and this one right under it. And then once that's done, we'll come back and we'll do the next row. So as I said, I went to the sewing machine and I just sewed my 1/4 inch seam on each of those. As you can see, I did not cut between every square. It makes it go super fast. And then, and for some people, what they'll do is they'll just do this at the sewing machine. And then as long as they've piled these up in this order, they can just take these to the sewing machine. And then while you're sitting there, you open up the top one and you put the top one on it and you can sew it. And then you can open up the next one and do this, and they're all in order. Well, because I'm trying to show you how to do this, we're not going to do that. I'm going to clip each of these. There we go. Okay, and there's no need to press at this step. See, the other good reason, once again, I'm comparing this to my one that I've already done to make sure I have this right. The reason I had you press everything to one side, to one color, is because when you start sewing these squares together, that your corners are going to match with those seams. If both are pressed to the same side, they just nest very, very nicely. Okay, so now we're going to do that, we're going to do that, and we're going to do that one. And I'm going to whoops, nope, this is the way I want it, where I've got that on top. So I'm going to straighten these out and I'm going to sew the same things. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, and at this point I'm going to have 3 rows of fabric. At this point it's very important to press. And what I do is, I'm going to show you this now, and I'll point it out again later, is the middle I press to the inside because there's no seams in this square. So I press to the inside. Then my other 2 rows, I press to the outside. So I'll show you that in a minute. Now we have all 3 of our rows completed. I've laid them out to match my original that I had done before, so I know they're laid out right. So we've got this nice black in the middle, and then our half square triangles angled down and in the corner. Now, these I press to the outside. So my top and my bottom I press to the outside, and the inside one I press to the inside. Easiest way to remember is press your middle to the inside because there's no seams on it. Then that makes it really easy to now we're going to sew our rows together. So we're going to flip that over, and everything should nest nice and neatly because our seams are going in the opposite direction. And our corner. Now, here, you've got your corners are going to match, so kind of nest your seams in there and get your corners nice and neat. And the same, this one we're just going to nest. We don't have any, matching seams for our corners. And then we've got our corner. Okay, now, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew there. Right there is a seam, and it's where your seams all cross. So what you want to do is with your 1/4 inch seam, keep an eye on that, because that point where they cross should be your exact 1/4 inch down from the top if everything's going together well. And that way, as long as you hit that, you are going to have nice, pretty points on your squares and your half square triangles, and you're not going to cut off any points. So I'm going to go sew that together, because then what we're going to do is we're going to open it up, and then you're going to put this on and do the same thing. So I'm going to just show you quick here, because we're going to do this we're going to kind of do this in one step here. So once I have this row sewed together, make sure you keep this in your middle. Then we're going to put this and put it there. Once again, match your seams, match your points, and sew there. And then when you're done, you'll have a finished block. And voila! We have our block done. Yup, there you go. That is all it takes. Pretty simple, and isn't that pretty? Now what I would do is, this is quite a bit of bulk in your corners here with those points. So what I like to do is pinwheel it. So basically, you take one side of your seam and go one way and the other way, and you can tell it's going to fight you if you try and do it the wrong way. But if you do it the right way, those middle corners turn in, the seams just kind of come apart, and they turn into nice little pinwheels there. And then let's see, so these two are, so then I know I'm going to finger press those to my inside, which means those are to my outside, and then it's going to be my inside. So I finger press them, and then I take it to the ironing board and I press it. And there we go. We have a finished split 9 patch block. I do think that's very, very pretty. Let's see, there we go. Now it's laid out the way I've been showing it to you all the time. I envision a holiday table topper with this. So you might want to stay tuned or keep an eye on my upcoming videos, because I just might show you how to take this split 9 patch I'm doing, have a couple more blocks finished, and turn it into a table topper, because I think these colors just pop and say holiday. And oh my gosh, can you believe it? It's going to be here before. Now that you have one split 9 block finished, all you need to do is follow the same process and get 3 more done, and then you have a total of 4. 4 square blocks is the perfect size to work with for a table topper. And now I'm going to show you kind of the process I went through to make the decisions to end up with the completed table topper that I just showed you. Lay out your 4 blocks on a table so you can look at them together and see what you think of for the layout. Okay, first layout is with the 4 red blocks in the middle. Little bit too big of a big blob of red in the middle. So I went, fine, I don't like that. So we're gonna just twist everything to get our half square triangles in the middle. Okay, yeah, that's very nice. And if we sewed those together, basically you would sew this to here, and then sew your rows together, just like you've kind of been doing in building your block. You would have an 18-inch square block, which that's a nice size for a table topper, a tad small depending on your table. So it's like, okay, that's very pretty. It wasn't quite what I was envisioning when I was thinking about it before. But what if we add a 3-inch border? So basically the same size as our squares, our finished squares. And we already have a lot of red here, so I didn't want to go with a red border. So I went with my green holly border. Yes, I very much like that. And then what I would do is I would put a binding of the red on it. So this would end up with 6 inches for your border total and 18 inches for your center. So basically a 24-inch approximately table topper. That is a really nice size. So that is one way you could do that. So you would cut your strips 3.5 inches. And what you do is once you have your middle all put together, then put on your top and your bottom border, and then measure and cut your sides. So don't cut your side borders until you know exactly the length you need. Okay, so that is one approach that you could do for a table topper. But I was thinking something a little different. Well, when I was envisioning my table topper, I was not envisioning it all sewn together in a single block. I was envisioning it with sashing. So I'm going to show you kind of how I auditioned some fabrics to figure out what I wanted to do with it. So you can do the same thing, no matter what 4 blocks you've got. If you want a square table topper, this is how you can look at things to figure out what you want to do with it. I still liked the half square triangles in the middle. But I thought it would be really nice to get some lighter fabric in the mix. So I have some ivory fabric that I thought, oh, that'd be nice. And then I'm still hedging towards my red in the middle versus my green. Okay, I laid that out and I took a photo of it because this is a cool thing you can do. Try different fabrics, lay it out like this, and then, in fact, when I first started, I had a big piece of fabric, I laid it under it, I put my blocks on top of it, and I took a photo of it. And then, as I tried other fabrics, I could compare them back and forth. And then I go over to my neighbors and go, hey, look at this, what do you think? I decided that it looked like it was a nice package wrapped up, but it was a bit too big of a contrast between my dark fabrics and the super light. So ivory up, out, not doing that. This is going to be a holiday table topper, and well, gold. Gold is a nice color for the holidays, and I happen to have some. I tried a couple of them. This is the gold that I decided I really like with it. It pulls in a little bit of the really light color in my green holly fabric. So I decided, you know what? I really do like the sashing. It makes it look like a package wrapped up. And I'm still hedging towards the red in the center. Though I do have another idea that I might try. We shall see if that gets in here or not. So there we go. I originally cut these strips at 2.5 inches, thinking that we were gonna have 2-inch sashing. But after looking at it, I decided, I think I want my sashing a little bigger. This is totally up to you. So as you figure this out and figure out what size you want, go with the sashing that you feel looks best. I've decided I'm going to cut my sashing in 3-inch strips. Therefore, my finished sashing is actually going to look exactly like this, which is 2.5-inch sashings. And then, yeah, I'm going to be very pleased with that. So if you're following along and this is what you want to do, you need just one strip of 3-inch fabric for your sashing and a 3-inch square in the middle of whatever you decide to do. But you might not want to cut that quite yet because I have some other ideas we might want to play with too. So I have my 3-inch strip of my gold fabric cut out. And then what I did was I cut off 2 9.5-inch pieces because each of our blocks is currently 9.5 inches. So the easiest thing to do is we're going to put this 9.5-inch piece on. Like I said, I prefer having my fabric that has all the seams on the top. So we're going to put this 9.5-inch block, sew it to that, and we're going to sew it to there. So we're going to do those 2 sewings, and then when we're going to come back, we're going to come back, and then we're going to put this block here and sew it there. So basically, once I come back, we're going to have two strips with our gold fabric in the middle. And then we're ready to do the other ones and figure out what we're going to do there in the middle. Okay, so here we go. We have our 2 strips that have our sashing in the middle. Now, we're going to need to do the middle. So the middle, you're going to need a 9.5-inch strip, another 9.5-inch strip, and then whatever you do in the center needs to be a 3-inch square. Okay, I'm pretty sure I like my red over my green, but I got a wild idea that we're going to try. I'm going to show you how to do it, and then you can decide at the end whether you want to do it or not. And obviously you saw my finish table runner at the start of this video, so you know what I decided to do. But if you want to do this method, you can. And if not, you can just use the timestamps in the description below and skip over this portion to the next step. Okay, my wild idea for the center is a pinwheel. I have a feeling it might be a little small and a little too much, but I thought, hey, let's try it. So I figured I'm going to show you how to do it. You may or may not have any extra half square triangles left. So if you do, great. If not, you're going to need to make some more. Start with 4 of your half square triangles made exactly the way we did before. And then you're going to make your pinwheel. So I always start with the first one, my red in the corner there. And then I put the next one there, and twist it to the left. And then I put one on top of there and twist it to the left. Because otherwise I never get these pinwheels laid out right. I don't know why, I can't unless I do it this way. Lay it down, twist it to the left. Okay, so there's my pinwheel. These are going to be way bigger than you need. So once you do this, we're going to do this, so that, and then open them up, press them, and then you're going to sew those together. And then when that is done, we're going to come back and trim it up to the size we need, and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, I have my pinwheel sewn together, and it is definitely going to be way bigger than you need it to be, using the sizes that we were dealing with below. But you can always make separate half square triangles, make them smaller to get your pinwheel. But this was the easiest way to mock things up because this is the size I've been working with. So trimming pinwheels, though, can be a bit of a bugger. Your first thought is, oh, we're going to go in the center and we're going to do 3. Nope, that will not work. It will get really weird on you. What you need to do is go, we need a 3-inch square. So a 3-inch square means the middle here needs to be at my 1.5-inch mark on my ruler. So we look at our ruler, and there's a half. There's my 1.5 mark right there. 1.5. So I make sure I line up there. I make sure my angle, I'm using the OmniGrid 6-inch ruler. My square ruler has an angle. I make sure that angle is good. And this way, my 3-inch, you'll see, I'm going to cut a 3-inch square. My 3-inch is right here on the angle of the half square triangle, and down here it is also. And if you look over, it's also over here. I've got my 3-inch mark. So that's what we're going to do. So actually I'm going to kind of draw a line. We'll see if this works. As you can see, I tried this before. So where's our 1.5? There's my 1.5. There's my 3. There. So our 3-inch square is going to be right there in the middle. Okay, so my 3 inches here, my 3 inches there, my 1.5 inches is in the center, and my angle works there. So, we're going to cut, and we're going to cut. Oh, this is going to be a really cute little pinwheel. Now, in this case, your 3-inch is right on your outside edge, and your angled line is going to go right here to the corner. Your 1.5-inch mark is here and here. We're going to make a little adjustment there. There we go. Now, we have ourselves a 3-inch pinwheel. Oh, it's pretty freaking adorable. But let's see what we think of it when it comes to using it in our table topper. My concern is it might be a little too busy. Okay, we've got that. I cut my 9.5-inch strips of gold for the top and the bottom. Now, what do we think? Oh, seriously? I really thought this was going to be a little too busy when I first came up with the idea and thought, ooh, that's going to be a little small. But I think it's stinking adorable, and I'm going to stick with it. Now, if you don't want to mess with the pinwheel, no worries. Cut a 3-inch square of your red or your green, and you'll be good to go. I'm going to stick with my pinwheel. So I'm going to go put that in. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to sew your strip together first. Sew your pinwheel. So we're going to sew your pinwheel to that strip. Open it up. Sew your pinwheel to that strip so you have one strip. Then we match our strip to our sashing strip to the 2 strips of our table topper. So I now have my center strip, my center sashing strip, all ready to go. So it's nice in the middle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to sew the center sashing to the one of the sides. In this case, you should be able to, because what I did was, as you can see here, I pressed my middle to the outside towards the sashing because I wanted to press it away from where all the seams were. It makes it less heavy. I did the exact same thing on the sashing on my sides. I'm pressing my seams towards the sashing. This makes it very nice because now when we go to put the sashing in the center onto your side pieces, your seams will nest very, very nicely there. So we're going to go do that. We're going to sew that on here, open it up, and then we're going to take the other side and put that on top of it and get that done. And then we will have the center top completely done. And then we can decide whether, do I want something bigger? I will probably take it upstairs and put it on my dining room table, which is round, to see, do we want to add a border or do we not want to add a border? The middle is done. Yup, here we go. The middle is completely done, and I'm pretty pleased with it. As I said, I thought the pinwheel might be a little busy, but I really do like it. So I took it upstairs and put it on my dining room table and took a photo of it for you here. It would be a perfect size, I think. It really would. I think I would probably put, I think it would need my gold as the binding to kind of wrap around the package. But I decided we're going to make it a little bit bigger. So what I want is, I did a little tweaking, and I think I want just a half inch. I feel like my table topper needs a little bit of finishing with the gold. So we're going to put a 1/2 inch strip around the edge for the border. And then I'm thinking, I don't know what size yet, because once again, I'm going to put this strip on for my 1/2 inch border, and then I'm going to take it back upstairs and I'm going to play with a width for my green, because I think it needs just a little bit of a green border. This is way too big. Whoops, that's off the screen. This green is way too big as far as a width. I know it's going to mean it's going to get way too big for my table, but I think it needs a little bit. So we're going to just take it one step at a time, put on a border, and then go up and measure it again and figure out what width I want for my next border. Since I want a 1/2 inch finished border of the gold, that means we're going to cut our strips 1 inch. Here's the deal. Now that you have this pieced center all done, you don't want to just do the math and measure it. What you want to do is to figure out your borders to make sure everything continues to maintain and be square. You want to cut your borders to help facilitate that. So before you do cut your bottom and top borders, what you're going to do is you're going to take your middle and you're going to fold it in half. Fold it in half here. Yep. Actually, I take that back. That's what you're going to do when you start putting on the border. I was getting ahead of myself. What you're going to do is you're going to measure it. So I would suggest, in this case, I've got my 6 by 24 inch ruler, which is perfect. So I'm going to measure from edge to edge. You don't want to stretch it, but you want to make sure it's nice and flat. And you're going to measure from here to here. So mine is 20 3/4. And then you're going to go right into the middle. And if everything's perfect, this should also be 20 3/4. It's more like 20 7/8. Not quite. Pretty close, but it's a little more than 20 3/4. And then you're going to go to your top. Now, you don't want to measure right on your seam. You want to measure a little bit down because you're always apt on the very edge to get a little bit of stretching. So about halfway into your block, you're going to measure. Make sure it's all the way out. Guess what? 20 3/4. So my middle, I got it maybe a little bit stretched, possibly, with my sashing. So it's 20 7/8, whereas the top and the bottom are 20 3/4. Basically, what you do is you take those three measurements and you divide by 3. And that tells you the width of the borders that you need to cut. In this case, we're talking 1/8 of an inch and 2 out of the 3 widths are exactly the same. That means I am going to cut my border 20 3/4 inches. Then what you're going to do is you're going to cut that and you're going to sew your borders on. Then once you have your top and bottom border on, then you come back and we're going to measure exactly the same way to figure out the width of, well, what then will be your side borders. Now that I have my 2 borders in gold cut, these are each 8 inches long by 20 3/4 inch wide. Now, this is what I started to show you a minute ago and when I was getting ahead of myself. To put on borders, you don't want to just put it on the end and put it on the end. In this case, I'm pretty good with the width and I don't have a lot of adjustments to make. But maybe you had actually 3 different measurements between the top, the middle, and the bottom. And so then dividing by 3, you were getting the average. In that case, the key thing to do when putting on borders, whether it's for a table topper or a large quilt, is to fold. Let's see, how do I want to do this? There. Fold your borders in half. For me, I just finger press with my fingernail and I get a dent in it. And then I fold it over and I do it again and again from the other side. So what I'm doing now is I have my ends and 3 other places on my border to match to my table topper, which means I need to do the same thing with the table topper. So I fold my table topper over here. Let's set that aside. And you're going to do that to both. You're going to do this for both borders and both ends. Don't just measure it. Okay, so there we go. I've got my center. Now I'm going to take this and fold over. Now, you want it, you want to be careful that you're not stretching this as you're making those marks. And if you don't have sharp fingernails to mark, then come back and put a little pin or get one of your pencils to mark it. And you're going to want to mark it actually on the back side because as you see here, okay, so we've got that. There we go. So it's this side. So I'm going to actually mark it with my pencil too. I almost need my black one. Where's my black one? There we go. There's my center. There's my seam. And there's that one. So I've used a marker and I've marked my 3 places on my table topper. And I have them here on my border piece. So then, I've lost the top of that. So then, I just match my little markings. And this way, the border, if you need to do any adjusting and shifting it, you're going to have it accurate in 3 key places plus the corners, and then you can ease in any other place. So there we have that. And believe me, it's going to happen. Smaller pieces, you may not have a lot of adjustments needed, but the bigger the piece you're working with, the more likely you're going to need to ease in your border. And the more you sew and the more accurate you get, the less. But it's going to happen. So this ensures it's eased in nicely and accurately. Okay. There we go. So now I've got those marks, and then what I do is I just go, okay, ease in, if necessary, between your pins. Seems a little tight there. Yep, we're good, and put a few more pins in the mix here. This isn't too big, so it's not, we're pretty good. Yes. So you're gonna do the same thing on the other side. The other, whoopsie, hey, there we go. And one more to ease in there. So you're gonna do the exact same thing with your other border and the other end of your table topper. And then you can take it to the sewing machine and sew these, and then we'll measure the sides. Now we have our first set of borders on. They're all exactly right. They help make this nice and square. So now to put on the second set of borders, you're going to do the exact same thing. So in this case, we're going to measure, and mine is 21 3/4. 21 3/4 and 21 3/4. It should definitely be better and more square, even if you had your first ones a little off that you had to adjust. Because the borders are helping to square it up, your next measurements should be much closer to the same. If not, take your 3 measurements, divide by 3, and that is the width of your border. So I'm cutting 1-inch strips, and because of the size of the borders, 1 strip was not enough to do it. I actually had to, I was like this much short. I'm getting it all for 1 strip of fabric with the fabric. So I had to cut another strip, which is just fine. So I am gonna go follow the exact same method I did before with folding, finding my marks, doing the same on my border, and get this last one on. And then I'm gonna figure out, are we gonna put on another border? Stay tuned and see. We have all of the gold borders are currently on, and I really do like it. It kind of ties it all together with the sashing in the middle. Put it on the kitchen table and thought, nope, we need 1 more border. And I was sure I was gonna go with the green fabric for the border. Nope, it just didn't pop. So I grabbed the red. Oh my. The red pops. Look at that. Look at that. This really is going to tie this all together. Yep. So what I'm going to do is put I cut 2.5-inch strips of the red, and that's what I'm going to use for the border. And in this regards, the size we have here, I needed to cut those both came from 1 strip, so we're going to need probably 3 strips. 3 strips of 2.5-inch, because by the time we get the border on here, we're going to be looking at 24 inches, approximately top to bottom. Therefore, 1 more strip isn't going to do it. So cut 3 2.5-inch strips of red. And then once again, you're going to follow the same process as before to do your borders. I'm at 21 3/4 here. I've measured. I'm going to put on the borders just like I did before. Now, as I did that, I'm like, okay, so we could just put on borders just like I did for the gold. But then I thought, oh, look, what if we left the corner? What if we do something with a cornerstone? Now, we could easily, of course, I've lost the squares I was using before. Oh, here they are. I could easily throw the green in the corner. Okay, that looks nice. I could possibly do a gold in the corner. Nah, doesn't do a lot for me. And all of a sudden I thought, look, what if we put pinwheels in the corner? Yep, there we go. We're gonna put, I think it's really gonna pop. We're gonna put little 2.5-inch pinwheels in each of the corners. I'm gonna get my 2 borders on, and then I'm gonna come back and show you how to make these pinwheels super easy. I have my bottom border and my top border all on. And so now, if we're gonna put pinwheels in our corners, which is gonna be just adorable in my opinion, we need 2.5. Because we use 2.5-inch strips of fabric, we need 2.5-inch square pinwheels. Now, when I made my pinwheel for the center, I happen to have some extra 3.5-inch half-square triangles that left over, and I just threw those together to get that. And I ended up wasting quite a bit of fabric with that. The method I'm showing you right now will work for this as well. So if you don't have any leftover 3.5-inch, this is an easy way, because my guess is when you cut your 3.5-inch strips of green and red for your squares, you've probably got enough left in those strips to cut a few more. So cut 4 red and 4 green 3.5-inch squares. And then what we're gonna do is you're gonna put those together and you're gonna sew all the way around the outside. And then, once we do that, I'll show you what you do after you're done with that. Okay, here we go. So, I sewed around the outside 1/4 inch on, I just need 2 pinwheels, so I did it with 2 sets of blocks. And then, here's where the magic comes in. You're going to cut diagonally, corner to corner. Be careful when you lift your ruler. Don't move your block. And cut again. And there we go. Now you have, whoopsie, didn't get quite through a little thread in the middle or there. So now we have our 4 little half-square triangles. Yep, once again, just like we did with our bigger ones that we did from the, actually, we're doing this exactly the same way as we made our big half-square triangles for the table runner, except there we started with an 8-inch block. This time, I started with the 3.5-inch block. So, same concept, you just end up with smaller half-square triangles. Now, normally I would go press this, but we want to speed this up a little. So, I've got my half-square triangle, and in this regards, based on you starting with a 3.5-inch square, you should have enough wiggle room in here to square each of these up to 2 inches. So you're going to end up with all of these as 2-inch squares. Okay? Whoopsie. That's not right. Let's do this. Well, there we go. Get it flipped right. Okay, so you're going to trim all of these half-square triangles as 2-inch squares. And then, just like I showed you before with the pinwheel, start with one this way, think of your background there, and then I put it there, and I turn it put it here, and I turn it, and the last one, I match that, and I turn it to the left. And then, because these aren't pressed, there we go. Now we have our pinwheel. And now we're gonna sew, and this is of course after you trim them and press them, then you're gonna sew those two together, and then you're gonna flip it over and sew those together. And then magically, you're gonna have this adorable, and now once you trim it down, you're gonna have this adorable 2.5-inch pinwheel. Once you get your squares together and trim it, your center, when you put your ruler down to trim it, because this is a 2.5-inch, you're gonna want this trimmed where 1.25 inches is what is in the middle before you trim it up. Okay, so there we go. That's what you need to do to get your pinwheels. And then, just like all the rest of our borders, now that we have, oops, we need to move this out a bit. Let's do that. Shall we? There we go. It's getting bigger, getting bigger. Now that we have the table runner, table topper with tops and bottoms on, now we're going to measure it. And guess what? That ruler's not long enough to measure it. No worries. I have another really long ruler over here. So we're gonna make sure it's nice and pressed. Get it nice and pressed. Don't stretch it. And then you're gonna measure. And I am at 25 3/4. And yep, so that's what you're gonna do. Once again, you've got these on, so you're going to measure and you're gonna figure out 25 3/4. But remember this though, you don't need a 25 3/4 inch strip of fabric. You actually need less than that because you're gonna put your pinwheels in the corner. There we go. So those are gonna go in the corner and take up some of that, what did I say, 25 3/4? Yeah. So with that said, probably want to do is measure from your seam of your gold to the seam of the other gold. So in this case, I have 21 1/4 inches. And let's make sure I've got the same here. Yep, 21 1/4, and I'm gonna do the same up there. Add a half an inch to that because you need a 1/4 inch seam here and a 1/4 inch seam down here to attach your pinwheels to. So if we have 21 1/4, that means we need to cut our next strip of red fabric 21 3/4 of an inch. Then cut your red 21 3/4, and then sew your pinwheels onto each end. And then that should be perfect. And then we can attach those onto here. I have my final 2 pinwheels put together, and this is before I'm trimming them. So we started with 2 3.5-inch squares, 1 red and 1 green, put them together and stitch around the outside. The same process we did to make our half square triangles in the beginning. But in this case, we trimmed them down, the half square triangles down to 2 inches. And now I am going to trim these down to 2.5 inches because they're gonna go on the ends of my 2.5-inch strip for the border. This size also works if you want to use this method for the center pinwheel. Your center pinwheel needs to be trimmed to 3 inches instead of 2.5. And there is plenty of room to trim this block to be a 3-inch pinwheel instead of 2.5. Okay, so in this case, we want a 2.5. So our center needs to be at our 1 1/4 inch section there. And My angle needs to be good, and up here needs to be 2.5. This one we need to adjust just, whoopsie, just a little bit. There we go. Sometimes you just need to tug a little bit. Okay, whoopsie, and then don't move your ruler when you do that. Okay. And then flip it, and now we've got our 2.5 inches. Your center's going to still be 1.25 inches. You've got your edge, your line here lined up, 2.5, 2.5. You are good to go on your pinwheel. Okay, so we're going to quick do this other one too, and then we have our 2 pinwheels for our cornerstones. Whoopsie, didn't trim that quite enough. Wow. It's like one little thread hanging on. Don't want to cut my fingers, so I gotta be careful. Okay. 2.5. Okay. Okay. So now we have our final 2 little pinwheels that are so adorable, and we have our last strip of border. And in this case, we're going to put the pinwheel on one end and the other pinwheel on the other end. So I would just flip them over so you're sewing. Let's do this. So you're sewing both of those where you've got your seams up. And you're going to sew both of those. And then it should be the perfect size for your table topper. I have one already done. So we have this, and we have this. And it's not quite big enough for the whole thing. But basically, in this regards, what I would suggest you do for marking your borders and make sure it all works is fold your centerpiece. Take your centerpiece and fold it in half, seam to seam, and do a mark. And then do it from your seam here to your center and do your mark. So basically you're doing the same thing we did with the other borders. You're just not going all the way out to your pinwheels. Okay, and then you're going to do the same thing with your table topper. You're going to fold it in half, matching your seams here with your gold. And getting your center marked, and then you're going to do the same thing, folding this seam to your center to get your 2 more marks. And then you can as you put this down, you're going to be able to pin, matching your 3 marks, also matching your seam for your cornerstones, and then also matching the very edge of your fabric. And that way, everything should match, and then your cornerstones are going to fit perfectly and match up to your seams on the edges. And then you will have the top finished for this beautiful table topper. I am really pleased with how it's turning out, and I hope you are too. And there we have it. It's done. Yep, you can't quite see all of it. I am tickled with it. I think it's lovely. I was concerned that the pinwheel in the middle might be a little busy, but it's not. It really accents it. And then pulling that out into the cornerstones for the corners just is wonderful. This fits perfectly on my dining room table, which I will show you a picture of when I get it completely finished. So the table topper is now done, and the finished size is 25 3/4. So you're gonna drop off a 1/2 inch. So, by the time you get binding on it, it's about a 25-inch square, which is a pretty nice size. Not too big, not too small. It's ready for you to quilt it as you'd like. I have a couple other videos that I did early on that shows 2 different ways you can finish a table topper. Birthing it, or the traditional quilting and then adding binding after, which is the method I will plan on using. So let me know how you finish your table topper, and I appreciate you sticking through this whole video and figuring out how to do this table topper. Take care. Hey there. I thought I would just jump back in here at the very end because I actually had an opportunity to finally get the table topper completely finished before this video needed to go on YouTube. So what I decided to do was I used binding. So I cut a 2.5-inch strip of my gold for the binding on my quilt. And then it ended up being a 25.5-inch square when all is said and done. I will also show you a picture of this on my dining room table and a close-up of the quilting. I have a long arm behind me, but I also have an embroidery machine that is capable of doing edge-to-edge quilting. And I found this wonderful edge-to-edge quilting design of hollies and berries and leaves. And I thought it would be perfect to go with my green print. So that is what I did. I used my embroidery machine and I quilted it. And I'm gonna take a picture and show you a close-up of that. And then I put the green holly fabric on the back. So there you have it. Now you know what it looks like finished. Take care again, and we'll see you the next time. Thank you so much for watching. I very much appreciate it. If you want to make sure you don't miss a single video I published, hit the subscribe button below and then hit the bell icon. And that way you will be notified whenever I publish a new video. But you can also find me over on Facebook, facebook.com/Wendy, the initial J, Haney. Or I have a Facebook group for those of you that love quilting, needlework, books, wine, and wellness. You can find that at facebook.com/groups/lifefulfilled. The name of the group is Life Fulfilled - Quilting, Needlework, Books, Wine, and Wellness. You can also find me over on my website, wendyjhaney.com. I will be doing more blogging over there eventually. As I get more of my videos done, I'll be blogging about those. But also, maybe you see some things that I'm making here and you're going, ooh, wow, I just don't want to make that myself. Well, a lot of those products will end up over there on the website that you can purchase for your friends and family. Once again, thank you so much for your support, and I appreciate you watching.